Romy Schneider was one of the most famous German actresses and European actresses of her time. Many people know her for her Sissy films, and she was just a huge deal. We rarely talk about European cinema on this channel, so I wanted to do a video that talks of the dark underbelly of European cinema because, wow, it's really dark. But she was known as a tragic empress. So much happened in her life that people started to wonder, wow, this is a lot. Too much for even the toughest person to handle. We're going to talk about all of the things that happened in her life and how did she come to get such a title. There will be some trigger warnings, but first, hey friend, welcome to my channel, Korean Allude, where we deep dive and break down the most iconic stars through history. If you're not yet subscribed, please be sure to do so. And if you're already subscribed, please turn on your notification bell so you never miss an upload. Now, without further ado, let's get into this video. Let's start first with her childhood. So Romy Schneider, originally named Rosemarie Magdalena Albach, burst into the scene in Vienna on September 23, 1938, just 6 months after Austria was swallowed up by the German Reich. Her father, Wolf Albach-Reddy, was a big shot at Vienna's Volkstheater, while her mother, Magda Schneider, dazzled audiences in a string of extravagant musical films in Germany. Acting ran in the family, with her grandmother Rosa Albach-Reddy being a shining star of the Austrian stage. But for little Rosemary, life was anything but glamorous from the get-go. In a shocking twist of parental neglect, just a month after her birth, her parents, too consumed by their theatrical pursuits, shipped her off to live with her grandparents, Franz Xavier and Maria Schneider. They barely had time for their own daughter, leaving her to be raised in the opulent but lonely Mariengrund estate, with only a governess for company during her formative years. By the age of 7, her parents' marriage fell apart, leaving her to navigate a fractured family life. To add to the drama, Schneider grew up with the chilling specter of the Third Reich looming just outside her window. From her childhood home, she had a front row seat to the infamous Obersalzberg, known as Hitler's favorite retreat. Rumors swirled that her parents, Magda and Wolf, had some unsavory connections, allegedly even receiving invitations to social gatherings with Hitler himself. And in Hitler's home videos, there's been clips with her mother Magda and her dad, so that's interesting. Whispers of scandal only intensified when it was revealed that Magda was said to be Hitler's favorite actress, with claims of a secret affair that sent shockwaves through the high society of the time. It's no wonder that the once happy home of the Schneiders crumbled under the weight of such dark secrets. Seeking an escape from her desolate reality, Schneider was sent to a private boarding school where she unearthed her true passion, acting. With every school play, she found solace and joy, scribbling in her diary, "If it were up to me, I would immediately become an actress. Every time I see a nice movie, my first thoughts are about the idea. I definitely have to become an actress. Yes, I have to." End quote. Little did she know, this longing for the spotlight would lead her down a path of both triumph and turmoil. During one scandalous summer, Romy Schneider left her childhood behind and moved to Cologne to live with her mother, who had grand plans for her budding acting career. But there was a dark shadow lurking in the background. Her mother had remarried the wealthy and influential Hans Herbert Blatzheim, who also happened to be the kind of man that sent shivers down Romy's spine. Under the guise of family support, this stepfather turned out to be a predator, making unwanted advances towards the young starlet. By the time Romy was a teenager, she was already radiating the kind of beauty that drew eyes and raised eyebrows. Years later, she would drop a bombshell of a confession to journalist Alice Schwarzer, revealing the twisted dynamics of her home life with a stepfather who had a disturbing obsession with her. And I never liked seeing adults kiss their adult children on the lips. This was something Romy and her mother did often. Maybe it's a cultural thing for me, because in my culture that is crossing a boundary, but comment below, is it normal in your culture to be like 30 kissing your parents on the lips? This probably put some twisted thoughts in her stepfather's mind also, and that's what made him so comfortable to go after Romy like this. I don't know, comment your thoughts below.
We need to recall her childhood and her mother, Magda. Behind their apparent complicity lay a tangled relationship of misunderstandings.
Mother was one of the big stars in the Nazi time, and that was everything she discussed.
Magda had been the heroine of numerous romantic comedies in the 30s and 40s. But at the end of the war, her career was at a dead end. To relaunch it, she thought nothing of using her own daughter.
Her mother was an iron lady who ruled her own life and that of her daughter. It was her mother who pushed her, and I think she got a taste for it.
Mother and daughter would make 8 films together, including the Sissy series, which would make Romy a star.
German loved her. She was absolutely magnificent. Everyone would have liked to have a daughter like her. She was so pretty, the ideal daughter.
In 1953, at just 15, Romy's dreams began to blossom when she snagged her first film role in When the Little White Lilacs Bloom Again, sharing the screen with none other than her famous mother. While Magda held the lead role, it was young Romy who managed to steal the show, setting the stage for her meteoric rise. The following year, she landed the role of a young Queen Victoria in The Story of Vicky, a film that catapulted her into the spotlight. As theaters across Europe and the US lit up with her presence, American posters hailed her as the most exciting new star, an accolade that only hinted at the whirlwind of fame that was to come. With the fame came some insecurities for young Romy. In a Lydia Lane article from 1958, Lydia wrote about her encounter with Romy, saying, and I quote, "Romy is 5'5" and weighs only 105 pounds. I, Lydia Lane, asked her how she remained so thin. The first time I saw myself on the screen, I was too plump and my face was too round," Romy said. "This left me with such a desire to be thinner that I now have no interest in food that will make me gain weight. Germans are great potato eaters, but I never have them. I try never to eat bread or desserts with my meals either. I'm glad that I have learned to like simple foods because I won't ever have any trouble with my weight. My mother is careful about what she eats. She has a beautiful figure," Romy added, "and this is an inspiration to me. Miss Schneider has lovely clear skin and wears very little makeup. She feels that a young girl should try to be as natural as possible. Once in a while, she struggled for the right word, acne, but I'm careful to keep my face clean and hot to touch my skin." Romy confessed that one of the things she had to improve was her posture, saying, and I quote, "After I saw myself on the screen, I kept thinking how much nicer I would look if I stood up straight. I believe that parents who have trouble with their children's posture should take some home videos. Then they would not have to try to correct their children anymore. Seeing yourself as others see you is enormously effective in correcting faults," concluded Romy. "I weighed several times a week, and unless I have been celebrating something special, my weight never changes." Romy spoke of posture. "It's the foundation of fashion. You can't make a good impression if you don't hold yourself well or move with grace." In that same screen test where I noticed my weight, I was shocked to see how badly I carried myself. I started to improve right away, remembering to hold my head high and to have the feeling that I was a puppet with a hook behind each ear that would not allow me to slump. Romy became increasingly insecure the more she saw herself on screen and would nitpick everything. As she got older, some producers she would work with would state that she wouldn't even come into film on days that she felt she was too ugly to be on camera. Even when others would reassure her that she was beautiful, she would always find something that was wrong with her. She did have a bad habit, though, which helped her a lot in managing her weight. She smoked up to 3 packs of Marlboro cigarettes per day. 3 packs per day. Romy Schneider was known for her style, and she loved headbands and headscarves. Schneider wore these long after they were fashionable, both for style and to protect her skin. Schneider was an unofficial Chanel brand ambassador and wore pearls and tweed. She was a favorite of Coco Chanel and one of the very few clients that Chanel would see personally. On April 30th, 2005, she was ranked number 1 in the list by tabloid Bild, searching the 50 most beautiful Germans ever. She was a very intelligent woman who was fluent in 3 languages, her native German, French, and English. Then came 1955, when she landed the role that would cement her status, Empress Elizabeth of Austria, in the romantic biopic Sissy. This film and its 2 sequels, Sissy, the Young Empress, and Sissy, Fateful Years of an Empress, transformed Schneider into a household name and a symbol of beauty across German cinema. But the glitz and glamour of fame couldn't free her from the suffocating grasp of her mother and stepfather. In all 3 Sissy films, Magda played her on-screen mother, Ludovica, while her stepfather managed her career as her agent, a situation that felt uncomfortably close. Magda Schneider also took advantage of her daughter's notoriety to make a stage comeback, going with her to all the interviews and social events. On coming from a family of actors, Romy stated, and I quote, "It helps a bit, but on the other hand, it's difficult. I didn't want to be helped by my parents because they're actors. My father, my mother, my grandmother, everybody was an actor in my house. You want to be alone. You want to do it alone, without help," end quote. By 1957, she was ready to make a bold move, leaving her tumultuous past behind and setting her sights on the French film industry, where she could find better opportunities and more independence. This really angered all of her German fans because during the war, France was the enemy. Romy was betraying the very people who made her famous. The articles that were written about her during that time was brutal. They would call her all sorts of names, and they refused to play any of her French films in Germany.
Berlin me représente une honte pour tout le monde, une honte qu'on traîne depuis 30 ans. Et puis Berlin, c'est aussi une ville qui est pleine de souvenirs personnels pour moi.
To understand Romy Schneider's love-hate relationship with Germany, we need to recall her childhood and her mother, Magda. Behind their apparent complicity lay a tangled relationship of misunderstandings.
Her mother was an iron lady who ruled her own life and that of her daughter. It was her mother who pushed her, and I think she got a taste for it.
Mother and daughter would make 8 films together, including the Sissy series, which would make Romy a star.
German loved her. She was absolutely magnificent.
The desire for something new would lead to a radical change. She came to France to make Christine and met Alain Delon.
Turned her back on everyone and went to France. The Germans took it very badly, always reproached her for it. They liked her as Sissy, and they thought it was shocking that she went off with Alain Delon.
She was like a traitor going to France because France was the enemy. Everybody was writing here, she's a putain. Romy Schneider said une putain. All the wonderful films she did in France were not seen in Germany at all.
With all the hate, Romy was not discouraged from making her way in the French cinema. She was quoted as saying, and I quote, "I have the feeling that I was born in Vienna in order to live in Paris. I want to be completely French in the way I live, love, sleep, and dress," end quote. Her first French film, Christine, was set to be a new chapter in her life. Director Pierre Gaspard Huy had high hopes for Christine and even let Romy choose her male lead, which led to her surprising pick, the relatively unknown French heartthrob Alain Delon. Their first meeting, arranged at Paris Orly Airport in front of a swarm of reporters, was anything but warm. Romy met Delon with an icy reception, unimpressed by the actor, and it didn't help that they were unable to communicate due to the language barrier. As it turned out, Delon wasn't smitten either. He reportedly found Romy less than appealing. He actually found her unattractive, not really a fan of her face. And just 2 months after their icy first encounter, Romy Schneider and Alain Delon found themselves on the set of Christine, and sparks began to fly, though not without some initial clashes. As the cameras rolled, the tension between them melted away, and before long, they were enveloped in a whirlwind romance that turned them into Europe's most talked about couple. Once the media caught wind of their passionate affair, chaos ensued. Schneider's mother and stepfather re-entered the picture, orchestrating a lavish engagement celebration that attracted the eyes of the international press. As the couple basked in their newfound fame, the tabloids dubbed them the fiancé of Europe, thrusting them into the limelight like never before. Many people now speculate that it could have been a PR stunt to sell the films they would do together. You know, the industry is good for that because they were engaged for 5 long years. And despite the fervor surrounding their relationships, Schneider and Delon refused to set a wedding date, with Romy claiming her hectic filming schedule left no room for nuptials. It was true, her life was a whirlwind of movie shoots, and after 5 exhausting years of being engaged, she found herself utterly drained, so much so that she ended up in the hospital from the stress. Throughout those 5 years, the couple lived together, presenting an image of perfection to the world. They were young, stunning, and talented, even co-starring in films together. But behind the glamorous facade, cracks were starting to show, revealing a much darker reality. Then, in a shocking twist, Delon abruptly ended their relationship in the most heartless way imaginable. He left behind nothing but a brief note that read, "I'm sorry. I know I would have made you unhappy. I'm leaving for Mexico with Natalie. I wish you all the best," end quote. Just like that, Europe's golden couple crumbled and Romy's world shattered around her. Heartbroken and desperate, Schneider took drastic measures in the wake of this betrayal. Reports from that time revealed that she had attempted to take her own life by slashing her wrists, a cry for help that sent shockwaves throughout the media and her fans alike. Miraculously, she survived the ordeal. It took Romy Schneider 3 years to piece together her shattered heart, but by July 1966, she finally found a glimmer of hope. She married German film director Harry Mayen, a man with a haunting past as a former prisoner of one of Hitler's concentration camps during the Third Reich. Their whirlwind marriage raised eyebrows and whispers, seeming almost too sudden for comfort. Later that same year, Schneider welcomed her first child, David, and the family settled in Berlin. But there was a cloud hanging over their union. Mayen had only recently divorced his first wife, leading many to speculate that Schneider had played the role of the homewrecker. In 1969, French director Jacques Deray cast none other than Schneider's former fiancé Alain Delon as the lead in La Piscine, with a hint of mischief. Delon insisted that Schneider be cast as his romantic interest in the film, setting the stage for a dramatic reunion. But little did Romy know she was walking straight into a seductive trap. As they filmed La Piscine, Delon made his intentions clear. Years after he had vanished from her life without a word, he was now determined to win her back, even though she was a mother with a new family. Despite his relentless charm and flirtations, Schneider firmly pushed him away. Still, the undeniable chemistry between them crackled on screen, a tantalizing reminder of their tumultuous history. Their complicated romance ignited tensions during filming that was impossible to ignore. However, in a shocking twist years later, Delon revealed the dark weight of their shared past. In a 2011 interview, he admitted he couldn't bear to rewatch La Piscine, confessing that the memories of Schneider and their time together were too painful to revisit, especially in light of her tragic fate. While Schneider may have resisted Delon's advances during La Piscine, her loyalty to Mayen was questionable at best. It later emerged that she had an affair with her co-star Richard Harris while filming The Hero, a scandal that was just the tip of the iceberg. Throughout her tumultuous life, Schneider was rumored to have affairs with a host of powerful and influential men. Allegations flew that she had romantic encounters with various figures, including German Chancellor Willy Brandt and American entertainer Sammy Davis Jr. Romy Schneider was not just a star, she was a force to be reckoned with. In the film That Most Important Thing, Love, she delivered a performance so captivating that it earned her the prestigious César Award, France's answer to the Academy Award, but her life was about to become even more controversial. Back in 1971, Schneider sent shockwaves through post-World War II Germany with a bold declaration. Alongside 28 other women, she graced the cover of a German magazine with a headline that blared, "We've had terminations of pregnancy." I gotta filter that word, but you know, the A word. They terminated their pregnancies. This audacious proclamation ignited a media frenzy, especially since terminating your pregnancy was illegal at the time. Schneider never elaborated on her personal journey, leaving many to speculate about the hidden depths of her past. And the Germans already felt a type of way about her, so they was like, wait, you're coming to glamorize terminating your pregnancy to Germany? No, leave that in France and other European countries that want to be progressive in that way. Don't bring that into Germany. After 9 turbulent years of marriage, Schneider and Harry Mayen decided to part ways, but this time the emotional fallout was not on her shoulders. Mayen, haunted by his experiences in the concentration camp, struggled with severe depression. Tragically, just 4 years after their divorce, Schneider received the heart-wrenching news that her ex-husband had taken his own life, leaving her to grapple with the consequences of their shared history. And he took his life by hanging himself. The press, because they already didn't like her, especially in Germany, they, of course, tried to find some way to put that on her shoulders. Was it the affairs? Was it, there was a lot of rumors that she was into the occult as well. So they just thought, that's interesting how that happened. But no, he went through a lot of depression, especially from being in the concentration camps, and he never quite got over it because it was really brutal, a lot of the stuff that he experienced. So the depression really just took its toll on him. On set, Schneider's reputation was also a double-edged sword. Director Robert Enrico, who worked with her in 1975, spilled some juicy insider gossip about the star. He claimed that Schneider had a hard time putting up with her co-star Philippe Noiret, whom she deemed poorly mannered. Between her whirlwind romance and her crumbling marriage, it's a wonder she managed to keep her career afloat. Yet, according to Noiret, she barely did. Her chronic tardiness left castmates and crew members waiting, much to their irritation. But some of her other co-stars did have some good stuff to say about her and thought that she had a magnetic presence. But for the most part, most of them were like, Again, she would call off and not really want to come in to film because she felt like she didn't look good that day and would keep the people waiting. And you know how expensive it gets when someone just don't show up. So they did constantly have to baby her and reassure her, you do look good, you are this, you are that, you can come in, you can record, for her to come into the studio. After her split from Mayan, Schneider gained custody of their son David and quickly remarried. This time she married her private secretary, Daniel Biasini, and for a brief moment, it seemed like she might finally keep the drama out of the tabloids until the news of her second child, Sarah, hit the headlines. Her daughter, Sarah, is also a pretty successful and beautiful actress today and wrote a book about her family that has pretty great reviews. But just as hope blossomed, it withered again. Schneider and Biasini's marriage ended in 1981, 6 years after they said I do. David, deeply attached to Biasini and devastated by the divorce, was left reeling. David, her son. So Schneider, not wanting to add to her son's pain after the tragedy of his real father's hanging, allowed him to maintain a close relationship with his stepfather. Then came a nightmare that would shatter Schneider's world forever. In 1981, during a visit to his step-grandparents, David suffered a horrific accident while trying to climb over a spiked iron gate. The gate, those gates that are like spiked, they made an iron basically. So he ended up slipping on the gate and punctured his femoral artery and tragically bled out from the injury. Just was hanging there on the fence. There was just a tragic scene. The pain of losing her only son, especially in that way, was unimaginable. Biographer Bernard Pasciuto revealed more about the heartbreaking circumstances surrounding this tragedy. Just days before David's accident, Schneider had a fierce argument with him. They had a terrible scene, Pasciuto recounted, as David resisted going on a holiday with his mother and her new partner, Laurent Pétrin. In a gut-wrenching twist, David had even asked if he could live with his stepfather, Biasini, instead of her, a request that Schneider reluctantly accepted, hoping he would change his mind. Tragically, he never did, and he just kind of preferred his stepfather for whatever reason. That did play on her that, he died without them ever having to really get amends, and in such a tragic way. The weight of this loss was too much for Schneider to bear. She spiraled into a deep depression, drowning her sorrows in substances, alcohol being a preference for her, forever changed by the heartbreak of losing her beloved son, like first her husband from a hanging, and then the son that they had in this tragic way. It just was too much. She started being labeled the unlucky empress. The once bright star now faced a darkness that would haunt her for the rest of her days. To make the matter worse, paparazzi were insufferable. They gave her absolutely no privacy and would even leak photos of the child from the morgue. Can you imagine? Romy was depressed and foreshadowed her own ending by stating, I just want to be left alone. She found comfort in pills and had a famous enabler, our very own Marlene Dietrich, which I did a video for. She found a way to sneak substances to Romy Schneider, but it all became too much. Also, there were rumors that Romy Schneider was into the occult since before she became super famous, and leaned in even heavier when her son passed away, trying to talk to him from beyond the dead. Sources close to her states that her house was always filled with lighted candles, dark and ominous, and shrines all around. She spent her remaining days grieving.
Je voudrais être une mémé un jour à la campagne avec mes fruits, mes arbres et ma fille et vivre.
But it is 10 months before her death that her world falls apart. Romy Schneider rushes to the Saint-Germain-en-Laye hospital. Her son is in the operating room. David had been spending the weekend with his grandparents. In trying to climb the entrance gate, he fell and was impaled. Romy Schneider is told that her son is dead.
There was no screaming or hysterics. There was no physical collapse. There was just the impression that it wasn't her who was falling apart, but the whole world around her.
She was utterly destroyed, not only by his death, but by the way he died.
She died half a year later, really. But I think that was the moment she died.
Romy Schneider's suffering does not end there. Through deceit and trickery, a paparazzi does the unthinkable and takes photos of David at the morgue.
Her dead son in the hospital. They sold the photos from the dead son 2 days later. 2 days later.
Si on sait, vous savez, ce que certaines soi-disant photographes sont capables de faire, je pense que le public a le droit de le savoir. Qu'on se déguise en infirmier pour photographier un enfant mort. Où est la morale? Où est le tact?
The photographers are relentless. Pursued day and night, Romy Schneider is forced to flee from one hotel to the next.
Surtout, qu'on me laisse enfin tranquille.
Cette chambre était absolument...
Her room was quite bewildering. Her room was like a mausoleum. That's the word for it. She had all these little lights and candles and photos of David everywhere.
She knew, of course, that she's got alcohol problems. And after her kidney operation, it was forbidden to drink red wine, and she was drinking.
Taking medication and drinking red wine and whiskey. And mixing is never good for the body.
She was doing everything to destroy herself.
To protect her from herself, Laurent Pétain hides her pills. But Romy finds an accomplice in the person of another German actress living in Paris, Marlene Dietrich. It was Marlene Dietrich's confidant, Louis Bozon, who acted as intermediary between the two women.
I used to take her books, and it seemed to me there were a lot of books. And I noticed that the books were hollowed out. They were real books that Marlene cut into to put something inside, something I myself used to fetch from the pharmacy, a product called Catagon, which is now no longer on sale. They were amphetamines.
Sleeping pills at night, stimulants to start the day. Romy Schneider is locked into an infernal spiral.
And on a fateful day in May 1982, tragedy struck when Laurent Pétain, Schneider's latest partner, made a heart-wrenching discovery in their Paris apartment. He found her slumped over her desk, lifeless and cold, as if she had simply surrendered to despair. Nearby, an empty bottle ominously hinted at darker forces at play. And despite the shocking nature of her death, the coroner ruled it a heart attack. However, whispers of suspicion lingered in the air, suggesting a cocktail of prescription pills and alcohol had played a deadly role. Claude Pétain, Laurent's brother, pointed to a weakened heart, a lingering effect from a kidney operation that Schneider had undergone just months earlier. She also died penniless, without much to her name.
On the evening of May 28, 1982, Romy Schneider and her companion return home around midnight after dinner with friends. Laurent goes to bed. Romy sits down at a small table she uses as a desk. The next morning, Laurent Pétain discovers her body. She is dead.
We eliminated the hypothesis of violence. The question was it or an accidental death linked to the consumption of alcohol and sleeping pills? I wanted her to live on in the public's imagination, as she always had been.
Officially, the star died of natural causes, cardiac arrest, a formula that even 25 years later is open to interpretation.
All the drama she lived through, the death of her son, that's what killed her. There are people like that. They're out of breath, and they just go.
So after 58 films, and after 25 or more years of doing films, nothing was left. No flat, no house, no car, no money, no nothing. She was giving life everything, spending everything.
In a poignant twist, her gravestone in Boise, Saint-Avoix, Yvelines, proudly displays her birth name, Rosemary Albach, a nod to her roots that contrasts sharply with her tumultuous life. Alain Delon, her former lover and one of the most famous actors in Europe, arranged for her son David to be laid to rest alongside her, a bittersweet reunion that spoke volumes about their complicated relationship. The shocking news of Schneider's untimely death at the age of just 43 years old left her fans reeling. But it felt like a tragic conclusion to the whirlwind life of one of Europe's most cherished actresses. Her story, filled with love, loss, and heartbreak, seemed to end with the same dramatic flair that had colored her life. Now, why do people call her the cursed empress? Because her most popular work to date is the Sissy films, and they do have them here on YouTube for free. Though it's in German, they do have like the subtitles on them if you guys are interested. So Romy Schneider had a lot in common with Sissy Elizabeth, the character, well, the real historical character that she was playing. They had a lot of similarities. So people thought it was a curse from that film too. Y'all know Hollywood be weird. Like the KenyanReview.org wrote this, and I thought this summed it up really well. It said that there was the terrible facts of Romy's tragic and abbreviated life. Both Sissy and Romy had been boosted from Bavarian obscurity to world fame in their mid-teens. Both had felt isolated in their positions and rebelled against the norm and values of the institutions that held them in such privilege and tight constraint. Both spawned myths of their sensual and rebellious exploits. Both continued relentlessly in the pursuit of self-expression, and each had been, as they say, a Madre Dolorosa, having lost a son to a tragic, even absurd incident. Just absurd, like tragic way to lose sons, right? Both had that in common. Both came from dynasties. Sissy, of course, descending from the same Bavarian kings as her husband, Franz Joseph, and Romy from a lineage of Austrian actors, her own grandmother, Rosa Albach-Reddy, a so-called court actress, having performed for the Empress Elizabeth herself. And according to Romy Schneider's biographer Gunt Kren, this position granted Abusive the intimacy of observing in person the 60-year-old empress just months before her assassination. And then also, one of her most popular films also was La Passante du Sans Souci. And in the movie La Passante du Sans Souci, there's a very stark similarity with the young boy that plays her son in there. And she played this movie right after her son died. You know, so the emotions of her crying in the film was real and raw because they chose to cast a boy that had the same physique as her son, looked similar to her son, kind of just the same eerie storyline, to even where the directors and the producers were like, yo, that's a weird and wild coincidence that it just so happens that in this film, you know, her movies would mirror her life often, either foretelling it or after. It just is too close for comfort for a lot of people.
Everything to do with the child, which was a big part of the film, was just awful for her. It was really hard.
She was acting with the young boy, same age as David. I remember the scene when she's at the table with the child playing the violin. It was very moving to watch. I have goosebumps just talking about it.
C'est mon fils qui va jouer. Max.
He began playing and she just fell apart completely. Tears were rolling down her face and she couldn't hold them back. She really fell apart.
It's as if reality was taking over from cinema at that point, and it's almost disturbing in a way.
There were 100 technicians there, and not a single one of them was not crying. It was awful.
The film was fated. You can't explain it and you can't justify it. It happened to be that the boy had exactly the same profile as her son. Why did Kessel put in a boy of the same age? Why was one dead and the other still alive?
How did Romy Schneider find the strength to go through with this impossible film shoot?
So people was like, yeah, these films may be like a curse to her because how come they always, in an eerie way, have something to do with her life? And we know how the cinema entertainment industries are all over the world. I'm not going to get into that right now. I'll work on a separate video, a little bit more in depth for you guys on just the real dark underbelly of that, how it works, and why a lot of these stars that are super, super famous, it just seems like these films tend to mirror their life or foretells what their lives are already going to be. Was these things planned already? And, you know, especially during that era in Europe, a lot of the people that would become famous were Nepo babies or was already in the industry or high society. It wasn't really your average Joe Schmo that would come. Somehow they were all connected or related, and you couldn't really get in like that, you know? So that's interesting to see. We'll talk about that more, but comment below who else would you guys like a video from, and comment below your thoughts on this video. And I know many of you guys might not agree with the mom kissing her thing. That's just me, a cultural thing. Don't get offended by that. But cultures are different and we have boundaries with our parents. We just don't, you know, but I understand there's different cultures. And I'm like, in the European culture in Germany, if you're German and you're watching, is that the norm in Germany to, like, you're like 30 years old kissing your mom on the lips or kissing your dad on the lips? Is that normal? Because it would just, their affections was just a little off for me. So, I don't know. I love you guys so much. Thank you for tuning in. I will see you in the next one.